Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. Today we are talking about how we keep ourselves warm in winter without burning anything. That is the critically important topic that we are all looking at, and it's something I've been through in my own house. A lot of people I know are doing the same things, with a lot of discussions, particularly in the UK, but also around the world, about heat pumps and how air source heat pumps and how efficient they are and how difficult they are to use, and they don't work in my house, they won't work. I thought it was worth asking someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And so I'm talking today to Adam Chapman, who founded an amazing organization called Heat Geek. And please do check out the links. I will put the links to Heat Geek in the show notes for this episode, because it's really worth watching some of the work they're doing. They're training people to be good heat pump and home heating installers, and they're working with the technology. They kind of know how this stuff works. And it does work. And it's a really important topic. Plus, Adam is just an absolute joy he's such an enthusiast. He's such an amazing man. He's doing such incredible work. Real proper privilege to talk to him. We'll definitely get him back on the show as well. He's just a really extraordinary man. So we go through all the aspects of how you heat your home, about insulation, about heat pumps, about burning gas in gas boilers, about hydrogen heating, all those things discussed in joyous and complex depth, but at a level that anyone can understand, which is what is the real joy of this. So it's been such a thrill to do this. Very quick plug for our live shows, one coming up in Sydney, then in London, then I can't remember after that. I'll do that another time. Those are the two that are coming up soon, where things like incredibly well-informed people who really understand things like heat pumps and home insulation and how you can heat your home without burning stuff. They're there on site and you can talk to them. Really important aspect of what we do, as well as all the test drives of electric cars and bikes, etc. So that's it. I don't want to go on too much because this is such a brilliant episode. I really hope you enjoy it. Please do tell your friends and family to have a listen and check out the Fully Charged Show podcast and the Fully Charged Show, and of course anything on the Everything Electric channel. But for now, please welcome Adam Chapman and Heat Geek onto the Fully Charged Show podcast. Love the Everything Electric show? Then join us live in Sydney in March, or London in April, or in Vancouver, Farnborough and Melbourne in September, October and November 2025. Adam, thank you. This is really good. Thank you so much for joining us today, because it's a really appropriate day to be talking about domestic heating, because we live quite high up and it's really windy, but it's not very cold. But still, it's nice to have some heat in your house. And I mean, at the moment, we're recording this in sort of midwinter UK, which is never pleasant. And so it's critically important. And I've done some experiments in heating. I no longer have any gas, and all my heating is electric, and it's challenging. It's not bad, but it's challenging. So I'm really intrigued to hear about this. But can you tell me, just do a little bit of background for people who don't know about Heat Geek and what you're doing, particularly in relation to in getting engineers and people who fit heating engineers need a bit of a wake-up call, possibly.
You said what we do essentially at the beginning there. What you're doing right now is challenging, and it shouldn't be. And the reason it's challenging is because heating engineers are kind of stuck in a rut. They've done this one thing for a very long time. And our thing as Heat Geek is to teach them the fundamental physics and engineering they need to use any heat source to heat a home. So that's like a one-off. But before we go into that, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, because I'm a massive fan. And also thank you because of what you've done for the renewables revolution. Heat Geek wouldn't be here doing what it is doing right now without contributions such as what you guys have done. You've really moved the industry, the electrification industry along so far. So we're really coattailing on, companies like yourselves. So thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Good.
So My name's Adam Chapman. I originally founded Heat Geek as a blog.
Right.
Because so I'm a heating engineer by trade.
Right. So that is your
18 years old.
background.
Yeah, I did an apprenticeship. I started an apprenticeship at 18, and I
Right.
set my first company up at 21. I always knew I was going to be self-employed.
Right.
In doing that, I wanted to be the best company. So I wanted to have the best information, the best set of tools. And I looked around and there was nothing available. Anything that was written by academics, for academics,
Right.
and specifically to academics. You could tell the people that wrote it didn't really have hands-on experience. It was a big disconnect between these two sides. And so that infuriation showed me that there was a big gap that needed filling, because heating isn't just a yes, does it work? No, doesn't it work? Which is how the industry has historically seen it, because they couldn't access boiler efficiency. It's a gradient. You have hyper efficient heating or less efficient heating. I'm saying heating, and it fits in all kind of renewables now. It's all been connected by the electrification of homes. And so I grew a deep passion for studying the fundamental physics of how we move heat around the home. And that was aided by online peer-to-peer conversations with friends until 3 o'clock in the morning, arguing about what temperature one room would get up to versus another, much to my missus' dismay, and hitting my phone out of my hand in bed. But I got the bug, and I still got the bug. I'm diagnosed autism, so it's probably my special subject. That was a late diagnosis, and but I love this subject. I love the community of people that surround it, and the challenge. The sense of satisfaction of tackling that challenge in the best possible way just is. It gives me a great sense of purpose, and I really feel like where I should be. So what we've done is we built a blog and then a YouTube channel to try and help move this thing along. And I didn't have any sort of aims to make money or anything like that, but I thought it probably will fund itself at some point. It's so important to do. And we were moving these conversations along with heating engineers to get them to kind of grow their collective knowledge base. And to help each other, which is a key part of this whole thing. But it wasn't quite enough. So we developed training, literally an online course for heating engineers to do, and specifically for heat pumps. This training was about heating in general, but it's all theory. You don't need to go into a classroom to know how to connect pipe. They've been doing that for 100 years. They just need to know a little bit of theory about heating. It doesn't even need to be about heat pumps. You can get the best heating engineer and he will install the best heat pump. The best heat pump engineer will not install the best heat pump system because it's the radiators and pipe work that's connected to it, etc.
The whole thing.
So it's more about the fundamental physics. It doesn't matter what heat source is. So anyway, we built the training, and that just went down an absolute storm. It's been our sort of rocket ship that's built this great community. We've trained nearly 2,500 engineers up and down the country now on that platform. Yeah, and off the back of that, we've had a flurry of homeowners coming to us asking us, right, we're getting a heat pump. We want the best engineer. We know you guys have the best engineers. Where do we get them? So we developed a map where they can find these engineers. And so this kind of thing just grew from this place. And now essentially what we still offer those services, but we offer heat pump installations that we guarantee the efficiency of. And we actually guarantee the efficiency. The minimum guaranteed efficiency is what MCS would, we're using the MCS tables, project the efficiency to be. So we, match and exceed that. And across the last 200 installations we've done, our average SCOP is now, or efficiency is now 440% across average hot water and heating. So these things pay back now, hands down.
Can I just go back quickly to MCS, because I'm always wary of three-letter acronyms.
Yeah, sorry. MCS are the governing body who I'm going to say the word police the renewables industry and sort of give the guidelines in which we should all operate in. And so, there's a rule that you follow to give projections. So we're all sort of singing off the same hymn sheet of how efficient the system's going to be, because these things can be very expensive, heat pumps specifically, and to know that you're going to get a payback is important. And a projection on its own is fine, but unless it's backed by anything, it's kind of meaningless. And
Yeah.
so we're kind of leading the way there. We're the only people who guarantee an efficiency, or we go there and we'll fix the system, adjust it, whatever we need to do. We haven't needed to do anything yet though, and we've sold hundreds of installations now, so it's going well.
Because that is, it is clearly a critically important thing. So I've had this one experience with a family we know, and I'm not going to name them. They're not poor. Let's put it like that. Yeah. They live in a very nice house about 20 miles from where we live. Yeah. And they put in, they've got electric cars. They want to do all those things. But what I'll tell you very briefly, when I first got a Nissan Leaf, it was such a huge investment and such a massive decision for me. And such can I really do this? It made me anxious and worried. And then this neighbour saw the car and went, and the next day I saw him, he'd bought one for cash, full price, out of dealership, just went, well, I'll try one of those. Like the same decision I would have. Yeah, he's the same decision I would have in buying a sandwich. Yeah. As opposed to, it was nothing. But anyway, that aside, they put in air source heat pumps in their garden. Well, they had 3. I can remember seeing them at the bottom of their garden, huge garden.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute nightmare disaster. And they had a cold winter and they were burning logs to keep warm. And then they had some other engineers, and I had nothing to do with any of this. I heard about this later on.
Yeah.
And whatever those secondary engineers did, which was get very angry about the first installation and how it was done.
Yeah.
Now I've been in their house. It's amazingly warm, and their heating bills have fallen through the floor. And this is a big house, old, beautiful old house, but now with good insulation and etc. So really remarkable difference between people putting them in who don't really know what they're doing and then people who really do. And it's really critical, clearly, with this.
That is the only difference. When people talk about do heat pumps work or don't work, that isn't a question. You could heat a shed on the moon if you wanted to with a heat pump. It's just that it will just look a bit different or be a bit bigger or, whatever. Yeah. It's how it's installed. It's can your installer make a heat pump work in this situation? And that's the only thing we guarantee. We don't try and make a judgment of whether heat pumps work when we go and buy a fridge or a freezer. We know they work. Yes. And they are a fridge and a freezer. It's literally the same technology. Tesla are the biggest heat pump manufacturer in the world because they use heat pumps for the heating in the car, cars, right? Yeah. So we don't question those. They work. It's just and this is where we've kind of the industry was kind of left behind and mothballed. And I think there was there's an element of you ended up being a plumber. There was just a bit of a. I remember being told at school, I didn't do well at school at all. As I mentioned earlier, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, just not the brightest button in that sort of respect. And I remember the conversation, perhaps you should just become a plumber. And I remember thinking along the same lines, I don't want to flush out toilets. Yes. And, all of this stuff only leads down one way. And that's why this whole thing's been very, very empowering for me and the engineers I speak to. Actually, there is a sense of pride that we can gather from the. And actually, this is probably or possibly the most important job that needs doing right now. Electric cars are on the way, and because if we electrify homes and decarbonise homes, and the only way you can do that is switching off the gas. The businesses, the lifestyles, everything else will follow. The home is where the heart is. Decarbonise the home, and the car was the gateway drug, as we all say into that. Yeah. The home is the next challenge, and so these engineers have a great responsibility and a great potential to do something massive here, and they're also the most important part of that conversation. When someone's boiler goes down and breaks, the first thing they do is ring John the plumber, and whatever he says, they're going to no, John told me they don't work. That means they don't work because they trust John. So our job is to get to John, teach him, show him, enlighten him. The course is called the Enlightenment or the Awakening. And, and that's how we sort of spread this message that this is the way forward.
It's fascinating because you're absolutely right. And it's so great to hear that because it's actual first-hand experience. We had a gas boiler years ago. It broke down. and he was actually Paul.
Yeah,
Our John was called Paul,
Yeah.
and we got him to come and fix it and get a new boiler and all that. And there was no question of anything else. And that was what you did, and you fixed that, and you had then you put the central heating back on, and it worked.
It's the way in, and we have amazing other firms out there. Era, Octopus, big fan of Octopus, big fan of Era as well. But the 80%, 80 to 90% of the industry are self-employed engineers, and so what we offer there is the opportunity for them to rally together, access the same buying pools, have the same buying power, and them to be able to offer those things as well. Because we want this to be a just transition, right? Yeah. This isn't about making big companies. It's about making people happy, and it is about people. And so we represent that other side, and we back their installs, right? So we're still connecting you with the guy that you bump into down the shops, down Asda or wherever. But we have the capital to, if he's, and God forbid becomes ill or something happens, we can send another equally trained Heat Geek in to fix the installation, get the installation done. So I know this is an advertisement, but this is what it's what we do.
But I mean, it is critically important that I think that I hope that it sort of feels slightly that it's changing, that the if you like, the social hierarchical position of a plumber, I think, has gone up very rightly, because people are going, I need, you need a doctor. Doctors should be up high. Teachers should be up high. Plumbers should be up there. Should be in that.
It's happening at the other end with that AI, right? So you've got AI pushing down from this end, and this is going to be the job we're all left with soon, the only job. So it's the job to be in at the moment. And the reality, these things do take a little bit longer to put in. Well, I mean, we're doing a lot of innovation there, which I can go into. But so the heating industry was already in a deficit, a supply-demand deficit. There wasn't enough heating engineers. That's why they can typically charge a bit more. This isn't helping with that. So we need more people in the industry, really. And this is a great opportunity for the existing businesses to grow, local businesses, and for people to get, move into a new trade that might perhaps feel a bit more purposeful, potentially.
Yeah. Because one of the things we should always acknowledge, and I have to remind myself, is that this goes across the world. So there's people watching this and listening to this who go, I don't need to be warmer. I'm thinking of my mates in Australia. They're warm enough. They'd like to be a lot cooler. But there is a connection. Right? They're all very happy to use air conditioning without a second thought. And that is the same technology, I'm assuming. It's basically the same thing.
It is exactly the same thing. In fact, you can reverse our heat pumps and use them for cooling. There is some technicality to that. So this is already being used. There's more heat pump technology being used to heat and cool the world by far than there is gas boiler technology for space heating. Or space cooling. So this is just a matter of, in this country at least, an infantile industry, and just changing the public awareness and it is happening. It's been a slow battle, but to be frank, it's been quite good to have people on the opposing end and the fore end, because that's what makes the noise that advertises the thing, right? And yes, there are disaster stories, but there's plenty of studies out there that are showing now that people are generally more happy with their heat pump than they are a gas boiler. But that gets amplified because of the the tribalistic nature of heat pumps and what it represents.
One of a couple of things that I've experienced recently, and this was completely unrelated to talking to you, I've just realised it. So last Saturday, very recently, I went to visit some old friends in a new house they've just finished doing, and they've got underfloor heating. Well, we had a short rental when our kids were little, when we were doing up our house in a Airbnb sort of thing, and we were all crammed in there for a few weeks while we couldn't live in our house. And that had underfloor heating, which I really didn't like. And I don't know, now looking back, because I'm talking 25 years ago, and it felt uncomfortable and weird, and it didn't feel like the house was warm, but the floor was hot. This house we went to was amazing.
Yes, it's totally different.
So has it, because what I want to know, has underfloor heating changed? I know
exactly what you're talking about. What you're specifically talking about is on-off heating versus low and slow type heating.
Low and slow. Yes.
It's the low and slow. It's weather compensated heating. If you have cooler temperatures on this works with radiators and underfloor. It's just a bit warmer than the room, and it's more a radiant effect rather than convective effect. And that is so much more comfortable. You don't get dust in the air.
Yeah.
You're not sort of going hot cold. You're not having one cold room, one hot room. Air moving around quicker. Everything just the bricks soak up the heat and then they radiate it back into you gently. It's just a lot more comfortable. But that's what drives up the efficiency, and that's how we've got to nearly 4.5 Scott so far, and that's still climbing for 450% efficiency for our heat pumps. Which, for any listeners which don't know, that means for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity we put in, we get 4.5 kilowatt hours of energy out. And we do that because we're moving heat from the outside to the inside, not generating heat.
It is just it's the most mind-boggling aspect of it. I mean, I was aware of four. I've only ever heard 4 kilowatt hours out of one, but you're exceeding that.
Yeah, we have ones over 5. We have plenty over 5. And the ones over 5, you do have to do more work for. So you will have to install insulation, possibly. I mean, we actually don't offer that. We just have bigger emitters, bigger radiators generally. But I think one of the main myths that I'd like to perhaps share this morning is that most current homes in their current condition don't really need much to any upgrades at all. In fact, we don't do any insulation, like I just said, and most of the radiators out there are absolutely fine. Even a lot of the cylinders, a lot of the stuff we're installing for the higher end homes that want to pay for that higher Scott. If you want to match your gas boiler efficiency, so you're not paying more, but you've transitioned, or even just slightly save a bit of money, you can replace very, very little or much less and achieve that. And that makes it reachable for anyone. However, we've recently also included finance in what we offer. And what that means is the monthly bill, the monthly cost of the in-system installation is paid for by the savings. So your installation might cost £50 a month, but you're saving £60 a month. And that's why this thing is going to self-fuel itself. And it's not just us doing it, but there's Era, Octopus, etc., etc. This is where things are going.
Yeah, but that's there is a sort of correlation between early electric car knowledge and heat pumps. It feels like to me that there's a lot of people. This is just friends and neighbours, nothing special. But they're going, I know we should get heat pumps, but they're really expensive and they cost a lot, and they don't work. We're worried we'd be cold, which is just the same as 10 years ago. I have an electric car. It is going to run out when it's dark and in the rain. I've got the kids in the back, and it will just run out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, people are scared of change, like fundamentally.
Yeah, which is understandable.
That's what it comes. But let's be real. You're scared of change, not electric cars or heat pumps.
Yes.
They're not going to eat you or hurt you, and it's just it's a thing that's going to happen over time as people break through. But all we can do is try and shrink that time as much as possible and try and make that transition as quickly as possible. So, you're absolutely right. And that's where we kind of feel like we're perhaps leading the way. We guarantee the thing's going to work. We guarantee the efficiency, but we don't take away from the local tradesman's plate, as per se. We're enhancing that relationship.
Right,
That's what it's all about for us.
But then the other one, so the thing I hadn't thought about, because I have a Mixergy water tank, so effectively an immersion heater. But I mean, I have to say, I am in love with it. I actually open the cupboard and look at it sometimes, because that has been a supremely brilliant piece of technology we've had. It really does work beautifully.
Yes.
But then they have just released a heat pump version.
Yes,
and I went, I didn't know you could do that. So I don't know anything about it. I've seen it at one of our shows. I'm going, that's a Mixergy boiler with a heat pump.
Yes, that is an excellent bit of kit.
When you've got an external air source heat pump, that can also, this is me being thick, that can also heat your water as well as
exactly. So if you had air to air, for example, you can't typically heat the water with that. The air source heat pump generates hot water that you send to your radiators exactly as you have right now, or your current or perhaps a new cylinder. This is why it's kind of an easy transition for everyone. It's what we're used to. Most of our homes, Edwardian and Victorian, we're used to radiators, and this will just slip into what we're used to. The only thing is having this box outside that people might have to get used to. And perhaps you might mention noise, but we've kind of all seen now they're just not that noisy.
They're not that noisy. No, I've stood near them. They're not that noisy.
Right,
I mean, you can if you want to listen to them, you can bend down and go, I can hear that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you're not if it's It's not. You're not in your
noisiest,
kitchen shouting above
exactly.
the noise. Yeah.
The noisiest is when it's sort of -2 outside.
Right.
And people, what about if I hear it? Well, no one has their window open at -2, so if you don't have your window, it's still not loud enough to really penetrate into the building.
Yeah.
So it's just something we've got. And boilers make noise. No one complained about. No one made a noise about that, did they?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then. So there's a thing about, yes, because that's another thing I just remembered talking about with when the mixergy was put in, was about Legionella's disease and scalding, which I noticed was on your website, because that's a thing I think as a member of the general public who has a shower and uses hot water to wash up their dishes, you don't think about. Sometimes the water's
Well, I think people, generally speaking, heat their water too hot and are wasteful with it. You need to be aware of Legionellas, so if you're not using it. That's a balance that people, I think, probably needs to be part of the public awareness that you can, if you keep your tank cooler, you will save a lot of money, you'll have a lot more efficiency. But there is a risk there, and every kind of situation is different. It's a very short video if anyone's kind of interested. But when people put in heat pumps, typically they're putting them in and turning the hot water to 60 degrees. That is killing heat pumps and completely unnecessary. It's another sort of tip as to how we got this efficiency higher and higher.
That is the one clue I've got is that I adjusted it's a different technology, I know, but the immersion heater. But the mixergy thing, so that when I filled the sink with water to do the washing up, I could put my hand in it. It wasn't too hot. Whereas before it was too hot. I had to add cold. Then you think, well, that is really stupid.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Why would you heat it up to cool it back down? Exactly that. The mixergy is a bit different because it uses immersion, but it's all the same kind of thing. So there is a few revolutions or innovations in the hot water space. A couple being from us. We've developed the Heat Geek mini store. So for those that don't have room for a hot water tank, it's basically the same size as a gas boiler, maybe a tiny bit bigger, and it goes on the wall and it provides all the hot water you want. So you can connect your heat pump to that, and it doesn't need an expansion valve, it doesn't need a pressure relief valve, all these sort of technical things that you typically have to put in. It's a very the only kind of downside is it could be downside. I think it's an upside is that we've made it pink because we love the colour pink.
That's lovely.
We're just trying to make some noise about it, But the whole point is it's not patented. We want people to copy it, and we want the tech. We're not trying to make money. We're trying to literally create the change, get the engine running, or electric engine running.
Right. And I mean, the other one I would love to ask you about, because I've had a rant about it in an inappropriate place when I was doing an awards ceremony in the building industry, and I'd just driven past hundreds of new built homes, which I could tell because I actually stopped to have a look at one of the developments. There were gas nozzles coming out the wall. They were. This is like 2 years ago. Brand new houses being built today with gas boilers, and I just had anyway. I mean, is that something you're seeing finally a bit of a shift in? Are there new housing developments that are building them with heat pumps?
There are, but it's so incumbent and slow, and it's insane. I think people have built these businesses in these sort of turnkey type solutions, and that's the problem. It's not even the will; they just don't care. And what's sad about it is actually if you're doing a new build or even a self build, it's actually sometimes and often cheaper to put in a heat pump than a gas boiler. Because for one, you've got super duper insulation, so you don't need big emitters. For two, you don't need to run an expensive gas line into the thing. And if you're buying heat pumps on in bulk, you're definitely getting similar price as the boiler. So it's just bizarre that boilers are still being installed. But our focus is on the retrofit market. That's hopefully going to be a ripple for us, and I think it's starting to come through. But I
mean, it's the bigger market.
That's a whole
to be
challenge.
honest, isn't it?
Well, 28 million homes to do, and our goal is to do is to be the leader.
Yeah,
I think we're going to do it too.
26 million. Aim for that.
Okay, right.
For 28. But the other one, actually, I learned at that same event when I had my rant, was from a roofing specialist who'd actually won an award. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he said, "You do know solar panels are cheaper than tiles, don't you?" And you go, God,
I've heard that. Yeah.
So per square meter, it's cheaper to put solar panels on this is on a roof of a new build.
And
and you
that's
just go,
not even
this is insane.
factoring in the running costs and everything.
Yeah.
It's all. It's now just a war of politics and incumbency, basically,
Yeah.
and human nature. But the tide is swaying, so I'm just happy to be along for the ride.
Right. Now, the other one that would love your opinion on, and I'm sort of nervous about this because I certainly don't, this is what we put in as part of an experiment, but it's a Tepeo boiler, so a heat storage boiler, which is on at the moment. It's fantastic. It works really well. I've decided if we lived in our house it's not that big, but it's slightly too big, I think, for this particular Tepeo. To really, I have to boost it sometimes. On really cold days, I boost it in the day, hopefully from a bit of sun. Yeah. But when it's on now, it's so quick. It's so, I love it immediate. Because it's not burning gas and it's replaced our old gas boiler very easily.
It's the important part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can we put you in a heat pump as well? Yeah. Or...
I mean, that's the thing. I was just told that you could do a combination. So you could use a Tepeo and a heat pump.
You can do.
I'm intrigued by them, and I don't quite know how that would work. But I mean, now we've put the Tepeo in.
You're speaking to the right guy.
No, I shouldn't be using you for a consultancy during a podcast. That doesn't feel right.
I am genuinely passionate. This isn't a job for me. I just love it. I'm the same as you. This is. This, if I wasn't working in it, I'd still be chatting about it till 3 o'clock in the morning on Facebook or wherever else.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's going to, that incumbency we were talking about, this is what's going to drive that forward. People getting passionate, excited about it, and showing others the enthusiasm, because it's infectious, and this is what's pulling people in and making this movement.
Yeah. But it is that, I think it is that, the experience I had this weekend in this mate's house in London, which they have done, they've done an amazing job doing it up. But the things I noticed, it doesn't have any radiators. And if you don't have radiators in a room, they kind of define what you can do in a room, because you can't put stuff in front of them, and they can't, it's all underfloor. There's no radiators. Oh, the other one I wanted to ask you about is, which I'd never seen before, but we saw recently on a show we did about an amazing kind of a very low carbon Airbnb in Kent, where they had heated skirting boards, which I've never seen. How come I've never knew about that? And they were really good. Hot skirting boards.
There's so many solutions out there now. No one has an excuse. No one has an excuse to not do something. I feel like it's only just started. We're really on like a technological. I don't know if heat pumps can get that much more efficient, but getting them up to those maximum seasonal efficiencies of 5, even higher than 5, is getting easier and easier, if that makes sense, because of all these other technologies and things that are available. And another part of that is the engineers all speaking to each other and helping each other out, rather than having an engineer that pretends he knows what he's doing, then makes mistakes in your house and you don't know about it, or you know. Instead, they're talking to each other, and that's the most important thing, because then you're getting the hive mindset, right? The knowledge of the group, not the knowledge of the one engineer. So that's what's really changed things in our industry, I think, and perhaps this whole thing.
There's another correlation, in a sense, between electric vehicles and this. I mean, there's a lot of correlations, but one of them is that the technology of an internal combustion engine is kind of developed. I mean, it's amazing how it's developed in the last 100, but it's kind of reached a zenith of, this is how efficient they are now. Oh my God, they're amazing in comparison to what they were like, even in my lifetime. Old 4-cylinder combustion engines were so bad when I was a kid and so inefficient. They got much better, but they've kind of reached a point where what else? You're exploding stuff in a cylinder, and it's doing that. Whereas all the technology around electric cars is, you can't say, the battery's only, the battery in the car 2 years ago might be, but the battery that's coming in now is totally different.
Exactly.
We can't keep up with it. But it sounds like there's similar exciting stuff is happening. New technology
it's exactly the same.
Home heating.
Totally, it's exactly the same. The gas boilers you cannot get any more energy out of a gas than we're currently getting out of gas.
So they're super efficient for what they are, effectively.
Well, if you design the system right, and if you don't have the system right, they can be. So you can make them less efficient, same as you can, rev a car too much or whatever. And what's really happening on the heating industry side is, heat pumps are amazing. They can get these super high 500% efficiencies, which mean you save tons every single year. And what's happening is the heating engineers are leveling up to hit these
Right.
efficiencies much more easier. And so, your average installation may have 2 years ago was probably around 280 to 300% efficiency. That's probably
Right.
this year, I reckon, going to be up at like 350% efficiency, already a load better. A lot of that may be down now due to homeowners tinkering. It's the engineers and
Yeah.
the early adopters that really push this thing forward. But the fact we're at 4.5, I think we're going to go further north from there. To be honest,
Right.
That's where it's all going. And remember, 350% efficiency is parity to a gas boiler running cost wise.
Right.
These things are it's a no-brainer now. Plus house value, plus these things have way less parts than a boiler had. So many bits in it to make it that extra bit of efficiency. These heat pumps have 4 bits really to make a heat pump. A boiler doesn't have that; it has loads more bits.
Right.
So loads of parallels between the two industries. It was just time for a reset and to move back to where we should have been, really.
Yes.
Great opportunity.
Yeah. We've got to mention hydrogen, but I just want to go back to there was something you said then. Damn, I hate it when I have a log jam. That's my. I don't think I am. Because my wife has often said, "I think you're on the spectrum, darling. Just sit down and shut up." That's my. But I think
hear that quite regularly too.
I've got so many ideas going through this old, worn-out noggin. I sometimes get a block. Yes. There was something that I saw mentioned on your. It is an amazing website, and we'll put links to it because it's really worth having a look at.
Thank you.
Microbore pipes, which I don't know anything about because I haven't got those because we got quite an old central heating system here. And are they a problem for heat pumps then? Is there issues around that or not?
No. So that's a common myth. These are the myths. They don't work in old homes. They don't work in on microbore plumbing. They don't work on. They have to have a super high expensive cylinder, hot water cylinder, and all these things are true if you use an engineer who doesn't understand the physics of how these things work. And so once you get to learn how to get around, you might have a small efficiency penalty, and I mean super small. These things work in all of those and save money against the gas boiler. We're not talking about parity. I say parity is the minimum. Having microbore just means you have to have so the technical term is hydraulic separation, and so there's a way around that, or you could repipe. You don't really need to repipe. Anything you hear like that, any excuses, we have a myriad of solutions for. These things have all been done. This is basic physics. We're getting heat into your property. It's a very basic thing to do, and it feels like it's super space age, but it's not. It's just a slightly different approach, and it's way less space age than the gas boilers that we extracted 99.9999% of the energy out of the gas with. So no, they work in old homes. They work with microbore. They work with anything. You just have to find the right installer. Our website's a very good place to start. Love Octopus, love Era. We're still the best though.
Good on you. The thing that I am intrigued by, which you said, which I really didn't expect, and I'll go back to the house we recently saw because that's one of the things they did. It was a early 1900s house that they've got in London, and they've really done. The guy's he's an engineer, so he's gone crazy. So it's all new windows, new doors, and a lot more insulation than it did have, and all that stuff. He's done very well, and he's done previous properties similar to this. But then you were sort of going, "Oh, don't worry, we don't worry about insulation. It's not really a problem." Whereas the general opinion is, "Oh, my old Victorian house is
Yeah, that's a good point. I should add a caveat to.
Oh, right.
Insulation is important, as in it's important in general, but it's nothing to do. Like the heat pump will still have efficiency without it. Right. To do both is best, obviously, but it shouldn't be used as an excuse to be a barrier. The typical things we would say are, so we can make it work with no loft insulation and high efficiency, but loft insulation is so cheap. Put in some loft insulation, please.
Do it. Yeah.
However, if you're talking about external or internal wall insulation, that's, we're talking 20, 30 grand, 40 grand.
It's a lot
A
of
heat
money.
pump's, going to cost you 7, 10, between 7 and 15 grand, say, grant, as little as £500, which is way cheaper. So do that first, get decarbonised, get saving money, and your fuel bill savings will help you start saving, there's like they said, well, there's the fabric first, fabric fifth argument, isn't there? And I think the reality is, every home has a kind of hierarchy. You would probably do loft insulation first, then it would be probably a heat pump next, because that gets you electrified. Then it would be tariff. Then it would be battery. And then it would be wall insulation, and it kind of, each property insulation might be in a different peg. So it's very the common phrase we say on our channel is there's no panacea, and people like to make these rules of, you should always fabric first, and that's just never the case. Everyone's different. You're in a home a certain amount of time. Your lifestyle's different to another person's. Too many variables. This is where the engineers or the people there need to be trained in that, so they can help guide consumers to the correct answer.
I mean, interestingly, it's as much, which is the same, but it's so weird, the correlations between EVs and home heating, is that it's a lot of it is psychological, because that's I've been saying this for years about there's no technological problem with electric cars, there's psychological ones, which are justifiable problems. I'm not saying I'm not dismissing it. People have anxieties and they're worried and they don't understand, and and why should they? Normal, sensible. Apparently, I've been told normal, sensible people can't talk about kilowatt hours and gigawatt hours for hours. Like I can. They're not interested. They've got other things. They talk about art and poetry. Weirdos.
It is an art.
It is an art. It is an art. But I mean, those things are that. It's just there's a psychological element. Who knew that there would be a psychological element to fitting heating? There really is. I think
it's now on a piece of. You say it costs less the lifetime cost is less. And it's still not getting snapped up just because of that. And I think people are busy in their lives or whatever. They just can't. They have to feel like they probably have to understand it to trust it. And so we're just getting over that trust back. And then once we reach a point of critical mass, it's just going to be done. We're just trying to shorten that as much as possible. We can't wait 50 years. That's what it's about.
But then one of the other excuses, which is the same in cars as well, is, it's much less now, but for the first 10 years of Fully Charged, the show, there would be at least every car review we ever did, any mention of anything to do with the battery electric cars, there would be, this is all well and good, but as we all know, hydrogen is the future. And then you go, and now I'm hearing that with, well, I'm not going to replace my gas boiler because I believe it's hydrogen ready. And you go, good on you, mate.
I never had that argument, as in I was never on that side of that argument, but I have a bloody good answer to it. Because I actually happen to run the UK's #1 hydrogen fuel cell installation company for quite a few years. So a hydrogen fuel cell boiler is what we were installing, and that essentially generated hydrogen on site from natural gas. And converted that into electricity for the home and heat for the home.
Oh my God! Sorry, wait a minute. Go back one step. Yep. So it had a gas input, and that's where you got the hydrogen from. So it wasn't you weren't splitting water using electricity. You were actually extracting the hydrogen
we were
from
using
the gas.
Steam reformation of the gas to separate the 4 hydrogen molecules from the carbon molecule, and run that through a fuel cell to generate positive negative charge, generate electricity, and generate around 7,000 kilowatt hours a year, and it would sort of similar amounts of heat energy for the home. And they were great little units. And that's before I moved into heat pumps, because I was a heating engineer, and maybe a fancy heating engineer eventually, and then these hydrogen things. But then I started looking at heat pumps, and the new range that were coming out, they reached higher temperatures. That's why heat pumps work on any old home now. They reach higher temperatures. They're more efficient at higher temperatures. And I looked at what I was offering, and I was like, I can't, in good faith, stand and look a homeowner in the eye, who I care about, genuinely care about my customers, and say, this is the best option for you, because I'm looking at heat pumps now and I think they're it. So I ditched that company, which was, a multi-million-pound company essentially.
Wow.
And I didn't ditch the company. I just changed it to heat pumps, and because it was the right thing to. So anyone that comes to me and says, "Oh, you would say that because you sell heat pumps." Yeah, I sell heat pumps now, but I didn't sell heat pumps before. I just saw the light, and it's about time you do too. You know, so I kind of enjoy it when people bring up that argument against me because it's quite a good answer.
Yes.
You know, the reality is all of that research being done. There's people way more clever than me out there. This has all been studied. It's all been worked out now. We just got to tread and walk the line now, not distract it with conversations and things that are never going to happen, because hydrogen, I mean, we've got a couple of videos on hydrogen. Hydrogen would be the most expensive single thing you could possibly ever do to your house. Even if the boiler was free, it would cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a month to run, because no one's making hydrogen. You know, to make it on that scale, which is just
it's a brilliant. I mean, I really
possible.
recommend. Yeah, I really recommend people watch your video on hydrogen heating, because it's just, you know, because you don't do it like sometimes I get a little bit. I get criticism for being a little bit snippy and ranty, and I just go, "It's rubbish, it won't work." You go completely the other way around, where you go, "This is really good tech. This is fascinating. Here we go. This is how it works." But that comparison for a nation, for like a country, how many terawatt hours they need a year to heat their house.
Yes.
The difference between hydrogen, even natural gas, and then heat pumps. You go, for pity's sake, it's pretty obvious.
Just using natural gas is better than using hydrogen. Like if you actually where you know, it literally just doesn't work out. When I start writing down my script for specifically for that one, it very much starts out as an angry rant, and I have to go through over and strip out all the swear words. And then you end up with some actually useful bits of information.
But then the one I get was, you know, you'll get criticism if you get to it. The amount of times I get, "Oh, go on, Robert, do another one of your mad rants. We love them." I think, "Oh God, the hours I've spent trying not to do that."
You got to be.
But so hydrogen isn't
hydrogen heating is dead, and I think, you know, that the lobby that have were pushing that, they're getting quieter and quieter, and anyone that is pushing it is now just disgracing themselves, because it's just like so beyond reality that I mean, they need to. They're not going to be able to stay in the industry if they're in a relative industry. It's just it's no
also
point in arguing.
I mean, it's so obvious now. It took me years to work this out that if you sell liquid fuel and gas, if that's your business, extracting and selling that, hydrogen is a way of maintaining that market, so that you can carry it, because that's where
the centralization.
Because I remember there's a wonderful man, Michael Liebreich, who set up.
I know Michael.
You know Michael. And I remember saying in a conversation with him, you know, 95% of commercially available hydrogen today is coming from natural gas. He went, "No, that's wrong, Robert." And I went, "Oh God, he always knows everything." It's not.
He's the guru.
98%. I was underplaying it.
He's the guru. He's the man to follow for that subject for sure. It's done. The more people that can educate themselves about that little thing and snip those conversations in the bud helps us all just move on a lot more quicker.
Yeah,
you know.
So then let's go to the heating engine, because we'll have to wind up soon. But the heating engineers, it just feels like there is a huge, you know, it's discussed on the news. You know, there's a skill shortage. We need more people to do it. It's how you encourage people to consider it. Yeah, we're talking young people here. I mean, just very briefly, one of the things that was a totally unthought out result of me doing Scrap Heap Challenge for 10 years was that it would encourage loads of people to go into engineering. I mean, that was never discussed before we did it. We had loads of talks about all these things, what we're going to do. And it was only after we'd done it for maybe 4 or 5 years that sometimes we would have a consultant on who ran an engineering college or was a professor teaching people about certain aspects of engineering, who'd come to us and say, for years, I'd go around schools trying to encourage kids to go into engineering, and it was like a labor of love. Now all I get is applications. I just sit in my office dealing with all the applications of hundreds of kids. And the amount of people I've met since then who said, the reason I run the transmission engineering department at Jaguar Land Rover is because I watched Scrap Heap with my dad. God. So, that was a kind of accidental thing. So how you then... How we could do something that encourages people to get into
a bit of thought, absolutely. I mean, first of all, before we go there, we have a pool of 120,000 heating engineers doing the wrong thing right now. They're repairing boilers.
That was my hope. So, 120,000. Oh, doing the wrong thing.
Doing the wrong thing. If we can convince these guys and girls to do the right thing and think about this other, and then they can have, when they're at the boiler repair stage, instead of saying, well, shall I repair this thing that I've repaired 10 times before, or should I put in a new boiler? They're starting to change the conversation. The net wave effect of that, and them actually participating, we can solve 70% of the problem just by retraining the existing heating engineering stock. The last 30%, yes, that's new, and we need to. I think I have a lot of high hope for the younger generation. I think they actually look for purpose, and this would more naturally, excite them anyway. For me, it's the cantankerous current industry that we need to tag along first, because they need someone to work for. You can train up these, younger people, but if they're not using those skills and applying them, or have a boss, they're not going to be doing anything with it. So we need to first of all get the current industry moved over. It's moving, but we need to push harder, and then we can, help introduce new apprentices, and that's the way we're going to change. We're going to make this is going to be the biggest transition since we moved from Towns gas. It's going to be massive. It's started. It is amazing to be part of. Yeah.
Now there are a couple of other things I'd like to quickly talk about, because it's some stuff I've seen recently. Is like district heating. So there are other mates of ours live in a big apartment block that has a massive gas boiler that heats all the apartments. So there's a sort of centralized heating system for multiple occupational dwellings. And I presume that that isn't something that your business does. I mean, do you put in?
We don't do that in Heat Geek, but that is very much part of the solution. So if you have a communal heat pump or something generating heat. When it comes to delivery of the individual apartments or street, or, depends on how it's kind of set up, then we're using local engineers again. The best way to integrate into that heat source is to understand the physics. We do the training. So then we come back in for the local. I mean, even for the actual main plant itself, those engineers, to get the most out of that, will need to do some training. We can offer some of that training. It's not, but the lines are blurred there. But the one thing we provide is like a common language of understanding between all those participants, so we don't end up with what I talked about at the beginning, which is an academic paper talking to someone who's never read a book. I never read a book until bloody 23. I'm too distracted, and so and that's why we kind of present in a colourful, image-heavy way, is to make this a lot more consumable, and so we're all talking on the same page. Hopefully, give the same language for us to communicate in a common understanding, not one where someone can feel superior by giving extra long words, which makes them superior if it's not useful, if no one understands what you're saying. If you're only talking about that little group, we need everyone to be involved, top to bottom.
No, absolutely. But that's, in a similar way to how we were talking earlier, I mean, that the development of those technologies of different uses. So we've just seen old, what we would call council houses, so affordable housing in London, in central London, Victorian built, not, very much of their era. They were built to have coal fires, then they went to gas boilers, and now they've gone to heat pumps. So that was just such an exciting. Amazing. So that was ground source heating. So they drilled huge pits. But what was exciting was I said, do you have to worry about, all the stuff underground in London? And I was thinking tube trains, underground trains. They went, no, it's World War II ordnance that had been. Right. So they're drilling down. Well, there was a bomb that landed there in 1942 that didn't explode, and it's still there, and you're drilling down. Bad. Wow. So they really had to be careful with that. Yeah. But so there's like a lot of holes. So they've refitted these old buildings completely. They've gutted them and rebuilt them. Yeah. But each one has an individual heat pump in it, like a sort of gas boiler. That's got to be a solution. And it's all. There's so many options now, as we said earlier on. No one has an excuse, that's a fantastic one. Shared ground loops. So you can pick up heat energy just from the ground on a horizontal array. You're talking about vertical balls that go down. You've got horizontal ones, and then that just circulates brine or water. Yeah. And then you just have a little heat pump that deposits cold and brings in hot. Essentially, it's so simple, so much more simple than mining for gas out in the sea, putting it in a tanker,
sharing it with neighbours. Exactly, and then burning it and getting it. It just makes no sense at all when you actually think about what we've ended up doing.
I guess is the bit that's magic and baffling if you're from outside the industry is that, like, the average temperature that they're getting out of the ground is not. It sounds like. I mean, if you had to jump in a swimming pool that was that temperature, it would be really cold.
12 degrees is sort of a normal temperature. Yeah,
but then you can get this temperature. You can take so much out of that. That's what's baffling and frightening.
It's how your fridge and freezer works. It's just compression. Squeeze something together.
Squeezing it. Yeah.
Every time you put on deodorant in the morning, when you decompress your deodorant can, feel it gets cold. It's exactly the same thing. Decompression, it gets colder. If you recompressed it, it'll get hot again. We see it all in throughout our lives. We're just not aware that it's around us, if that makes sense.
Actually, blowing up a car tire. If
same
hold
thing.
the nozzle, it's hot. Yeah.
Exactly that.
Oh, I'm so clever to think of that analogy.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Well, I had one last thing, and of course now it's gone again. Damn. So okay. Now let's just quickly go. Do you? I mean, if magically all those 120,000 heating engineers were suddenly heat pump geniuses, would they be enough for us to transition to a heat pump, or do we need more still? I suppose some of them are going to be retiring as well, aren't they?
Well, exactly. Yeah, they are older, generally speaking. It's an aging industry, to be fair. So for that reason, no. And also, just for those poor people, it's a lot of work lifting up a heavy boiler, let alone a heat pump and radiators. The poor needs. I think we need to pad out the industry a bit. Heating engineers charge generally quite a lot of money. However, they work bloody hard because they don't really have. If you speak to anyone about their hours, they just don't stop, and they're really breaking their back, literally. So I think they kind of deserve it. We really need to pad that out and just make things a bit more normal. I think so. Yes, it kind of would be enough, but I don't think that's the way we should go about it. I think we need to make this a very, and we need to give people opportunity as well. Like this is I said at the beginning, this needs to be a transition. It's a big part of the transition that gives opportunity to lots of people. This should be a sharing thing, not a one person getting rich. This is about decentralization of energy and decentralization of money and economics and everything else. This is a way to empower local businesses and people.
But I mean, I think I don't want to be too flattering, but I think what's so important about you individually is that you're such a good example of someone who, and I'm similar, who didn't do well at school, who didn't kind of fit in with the educational system. And I was quite an academic kid I did really well as a primary school kid. And until I was about 14, I was a bright kid who would have gone to university and done all that stuff.
Yeah,
and I don't know what happened. Whether I might have got an extra dose of testosterone, I went right off the rails. It all went horribly wrong. I finished my education very young, and that's that frustration when I meet people whose kids or individuals who struggled at school but have found their way through. A role model like you is so important for people to know. You didn't when I was at university, I studied electrical engineering. No, you've learned from the ground up as an apprentice,
this is a thing that's really, really close to my heart. This isn't a sob story, but you're making me teary. I diagnosed ADHD, autism, whatever other excuses there are, dyslexia, but they're superpowers. They make people super creative, super good at engineering, specifically dyslexia. That's very well linked to people moving into engineering. I mean, you're clearly neurodiverse as well. That's not an offence, by the way. That's a massive compliment. And knowing that I was kind of left behind at school and sort of, he's just not going to do that well. Yeah. And later on going, actually, I'm quite good at something, and this could have been picked up early. I feel a little bit bad about that, but I'm glad of everything that's happened in my life. I'm in a very good place. What makes me sad is all those children that don't get the break I've been lucky enough to get, and have so much potential, and have been kept down in that that mental place where they're not good enough, and they can't do something bigger. And actually, they're the people who do big things. They're the people who think outside of the box. And that is a bit. I'm definitely going to be doing something in charity. There's a dyslexia UK charity, Dyslexic Thinking. Richard Branson's part of it. He's got dyslexia. And so that's why I keep on talking about just transition and all this sort of thing. It's to do with education, how we approach education. But so thank you so much for that compliment. That was a compliment that hit me right in the heart, which is why I felt like I need to say that bit. So thank you.
You definitely deserve it. No, I mean it's been a proper. Sometimes when I do record podcasts, it is a struggle. I find doing them remotely like we're doing, and it's difficult to keep focus. And so there have been times when I've gone, I haven't got a bloody clue what to ask now. There wasn't a moment with you where I wasn't excited to learn more, to find out more. So it's been a real joy talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And good luck with it all in the future. And we'll definitely we'll be seeing you again, I'm sure. But,
can I see you on my channel?
Oh, God, yeah. Yes.
That'd be great. Totally reciprocated. To us people doing the good thing and the right thing, and in this industry, we should be. We're the ones that are going to move this thing forward and get us over that hurdle of the incumbent. And pull them over. So thanks so much for having me on. Really, really enjoyed it.
Real pleasure. Take care. Really hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. What an absolute delight to talk to Adam. What a wonderful man. That's all. I'm not going to say anything else. We'll be back next week with another amazing guest talking about other incredible topics and products. Until then, as always, if you have been, thank you for listening/watching.